There's a moment most of us remember. Not dramatic, not life-changing at the time, just a shift. One day, something was everywhere. A product, a habit, a way of doing things. And you didn't choose it, exactly. It just became the only option that made sense. You looked around, and everyone else was doing it too. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you wondered, when did this happen? Let's go back to the late 1990s. Not far, just far enough that the world still felt a little slower. If you wanted to buy something, you went to a store. If you wanted to talk to someone, you called them. If you wanted to know something, you looked it up in a book, or you asked someone who might know, or you just didn't know. There was friction in everything. And then the internet arrived in living rooms, not as a novelty, as infrastructure. By 2000, it wasn't strange anymore to go online. It was strange not to. Dial-up gave way to broadband. Desktop computers became laptops. Access became expected. But here's what's easy to forget. The internet didn't arrive alone. It arrived with a promise. Convenience. That was the word, over and over. Convenience, ease, instant. Everything you need faster than before, simpler than before, better than before. And it was better, for a while. You could email someone across the world in seconds. You could find a recipe without calling your mom. You could buy a book without leaving your house. Small things, useful things. But convenience has a trait we don't talk about enough. It's binary. Once something is more convenient, the old way doesn't just become less popular, it becomes unthinkable. You don't go back to the phone book once you've used Google. You don't go back to the mall once you've used Amazon. You don't go back to waiting once you've had instant. And every company building something in those years understood this. They understood that if they could make their product the easiest option, they wouldn't need it to be the best option. They just needed to make it the default. By 2007, the iPhone launched. It wasn't the first smartphone, but it was the first one that made the internet feel like it was in your hand, not on a desk somewhere. Within 2 years, apps existed for everything: communication, navigation, shopping, banking, dating, food, entertainment, work. The friction was gone. And here's where things changed in a way that's hard to see unless you step back. The app economy didn't just make things faster, it made things mediated. You weren't calling a taxi, you were opening Uber. You weren't going to a restaurant, you were opening Seamless. You weren't meeting someone, you were swiping on Tinder. Every action that used to be direct, person to person, you to world, now had a layer in between, a platform. And platforms by design have interests. They need you to stay, they need you to return, they need you to depend on them. So they optimized. Not for your happiness, not for your health, not even for your satisfaction really, for your engagement. Time on app, clicks per session, retention rate. These were the metrics that mattered. And slowly, without anyone announcing it, the things we did every day began to change shape. Conversations got shorter, attention spans fractured, patience disappeared. If a page took more than 2 seconds to load, you left. If a video didn't hook you in 5 seconds, you scrolled. If a relationship required effort, you unmatched. The internet had trained us, not in a cruel way, not even in an obvious way, just in the way water trains stone, gradually, constantly, until the shape is completely different and you can't remember what it looked like before. Let's talk about what this did to us physically, because it wasn't just habits that changed. In 2010, the average American spent about 3 hours a day looking at screens. By 2020, that number was over 7 hours. 7 hours A day. Sitting, staring, scrolling. And the body doesn't adapt to that well. Neck pain became so common among young people that doctors started calling it text neck, a permanent forward curve in the cervical spine from looking down at phones. Eye strain became ubiquitous. Optometrists started seeing children as young as 8 with myopia rates that used to appear only in adults. Sleep disrupted. Blue light from screens suppresses melatonin production. Millions of people scrolling in bed, wondering why they can't fall asleep, not connecting the two. Posture collapsed. Shoulders rolled forward. Lower back pain in teenagers. This wasn't a glitch. This was the cost of convenience. But we didn't see it that way. We saw it as personal failure. I should stand up more. I should put the phone down. I should have better discipline. The system became invisible. And when the system is invisible, you blame yourself. There's a specific year when something shifted in how people communicated. 2012. That's when Instagram hit 100 million users, when Twitter became the place where news broke, when Facebook was no longer just for college students, it was for everyone. And social media stopped being a place you visited. It became a place you lived. But living there required something new. You had to perform. Every photo was curated, every caption workshopped, every interaction visible, recorded, permanent. You couldn't just be anymore. You had to be presentable. And the platforms rewarded certain behaviors. Outrage got engagement. Vulnerability got likes. Perfection got followers. So people optimized. They started shaping their lives around what would perform well. Vacations were chosen for how they'd look in photos. Meals were plated for Instagram before they were eaten. Relationships were announced, documented, and dissolved in public. And strangers weighed in on everything. Your body, your opinions, your choices, your worth. The feedback loop was instant. You posted something, and within seconds you knew whether people approved. And if they didn't, you felt it. Not abstractly, physically. Because the brain doesn't distinguish between social rejection online and social rejection in person. It processes both as threat. Cortisol spikes, heart rate increases. The body prepares to fight or flee. But there's nowhere to go. You're just sitting there, holding a phone. And millions of people, mostly young people, started living in a state of low-level chronic stress. Not from danger, from visibility. By 2015, something interesting was happening in the job market. The gig economy had arrived. Uber, Lyft, TaskRabbit, DoorDash, Instacart, Fiverr, Upwork. All of it framed the same way. Be your own boss, work on your own schedule, freedom. And millions of people signed up. Because it was flexible, it was accessible. You could make money quickly, without a resume, without an interview. But flexibility came with a cost. No benefits, no security, no guarantee of minimum wage. You weren't an employee, you were a contractor, which meant the company had no obligation to you. If you got sick, you didn't get paid. If demand dropped, you didn't get hours. If the algorithm changed, your income disappeared. And the algorithm always changed. Uber drivers who made $30 an hour in 2013 were making $12 an hour by 2018. DoorDash couriers were spending more on gas than they earned on some shifts. But they kept going, because what else was there? The traditional job market had shifted too. Entry-level positions required 3 years of experience. Internships were unpaid. Student debt was paralyzing. The gig economy wasn't freedom. It was the only option that didn't require credentials you couldn't afford. And it normalized something dangerous. The idea that work should be constant, that every moment could be monetized, that rest was waste. People started side hustling in every spare hour, driving after their day job, selling crafts on Etsy at midnight, monetizing hobbies they used to do for joy. And it wasn't greed, it was survival, because the cost of living kept rising and wages didn't. So people worked more, and the platforms made billions. Then 2020 happened, the pandemic, and everything that had been creeping toward digital dominance lunged. Work moved home, school moved online, socialization moved to Zoom, groceries were delivered, restaurants became ghost kitchens, church happened on Facebook Live. The physical world became optional. And for many people, it stayed that way. Even after lockdowns ended, the habits remained. Because once convenience is established, it's almost impossible to reverse. Why go to a store when you can click a button? Why see a friend when you can text? Why leave the house when everything comes to you? The world got smaller. Not in a cozy way, in a contracted way. People stopped walking as much, stopped driving as much, stopped encountering strangers. Communities that used to gather in person started gathering in apps. And apps have no geography. You could live in Kansas and spend all your time talking to people in Berlin, which sounds global, but it also means you stop talking to your neighbor. Loneliness spiked, not because people were alone, because they were connected, but not together. And the body knows the difference.
So, here we are, 2.5 decades after the internet became infrastructure. And it's worth asking, what did we gain? Speed, access, efficiency, information, connection across distance. All of that is real. But what did we lose? Patience, presence, privacy, stability, the ability to be bored without reaching for a screen, the ability to sit with discomfort, the ability to not know something and be okay with it, the ability to exist without an audience. These weren't taken from us. We traded them, freely, because the trade felt good at the time. And by the time we realized what we'd given up, the deal was already done. The platforms weren't going away. The habits weren't reversible. The infrastructure was permanent. And the strangest part, most of us don't even see it anymore. We just think this is how life is. Fast, disconnected, exhausting, curated, surveilled, optimized, normal. There's a phrase that keeps coming up in different contexts. You are not the customer, you are the product. It's been said about social media, about apps, about free services that harvest your data. And it's true. But it's deeper than that. You're not just the product, you're the environment the product was designed to shape. Every notification, every autoplay, every algorithmic suggestion, they weren't built to serve you, they were built to change you into someone who comes back, someone who scrolls longer, buys faster, engages more, someone whose behaviors are predictable enough to monetize. And it worked. Not because we were weak, because we're human. And humans adapt. We adapt to what's in front of us. We adapt to what's easy. We adapt to what everyone else is doing. And once enough people adapt, it stops feeling like adaptation. It just feels like life. This is one chapter. There are others.